Meu nome é Rafael Lazzarini, sou CEO e fundador do Rio2C. Gostaria de compartilhar com vocês a nossa iniciativa digital, o Rio2C Alive. Essa conferência virtual do Rio2C vai reunir mentes brilhantes com o objetivo de reimaginar o futuro, conectar e fomentar a indústria criativa nesses tempos de distanciamento social. Como o evento desse ano foi adiado, a gente resolveu, nesse período, nesse ato, criar essa iniciativa para manter a missão do Rio2C viva, uma missão de informar, de inspirar, de conectar a nossa indústria criativa e manter viva aí toda a criatividade e inventividade do brasileiro. A gente vai falar em inglês nesse painel, tá? Então é bom lembrar que vocês podem ter a ferramenta de legendagem, tá? Acessar a ferramenta de legendagem do YouTube, tá? É disponível aí para todos os idiomas. Okay? So before starting this panel and introducing our guest today, I'm honored to announce that Ambev and Rio2C set a partnership to provoke, map, and boost Brazilian creativity. I would like to present the Ambev Creative X, a platform to understand trends, reformat concepts, practice innovation, and experience creativity. Every day, we will bring the special content to Rio2C Alive. And today, we are heading to a very, very strong start. I'm with these two gentlemen here, good friends, to join me on the panel. It's going to be a very casual conversation, but I'm pretty much sure that you guys will love it. We have Paul Propster. Paul is a seasoned storyteller, strategy lover, line blur, dot connector, message-driven professional. With more than 25 years in strategic communication, Paul has helped clients across industry to tell their stories. Since 2014, Paul has been the resident storytelling architect for NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. So if NASA is today a love brand, Paul has a lot to do with that. And on the other corner, we have our friend and partner, Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo is the CMO for Ambev Brazil. Ricardo moved back to Brazil last year to take the marketing helm on Ambev. He had a non-traditional rise to the top of marketing in the business world. From his beginning 19 years ago, selling beer in Brazil, he learned the business from the ground up. His passion is for creativity that shapes culture. And he worked across a number of roles around the globe, including England, Canada, China, New York City, and lately Mexico, right, Ricardo?
That's right. Just back from Mexico.
So we're going to talk about communication strategies, how to partner with teams to cultivate brand narrative, to produce greater emotional investment in stakeholders, and how to lead the development and establishment of a storytelling culture, process, and tools. So I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation about how to build trust, how to build brand credibility. So I'm going to leave now to the expert here. So guys, please.
Well, I have to say, first and foremost, it's much easier, I think, to sell beer than to sell rocket ships. So I can't wait to hear Paul talk about this, because man.
Yeah, but I'll tell you though, without those cold beers, a lot of work would not get done.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are drinking milk when you're sending people to the moon, right?
Well, no, this is great. This is exciting. I think we're going to have a great conversation here, and I liked what Raphael was touching on. Kind of that authenticity and that belief, right? So for us, we're trying to talk about the future. We're trying to get our stakeholders to believe our tomorrow over somebody else's. And with that, it really does come down to the story that we're telling. We need to help them join us on this journey of belief. And so story and strategy are two of the things that myself and my team have been able to introduce to the lab to become part of the fabric of maturing a mission idea. And so with that, maybe over to Ricardo, I think, you probably touch on some of those same areas as far as, that customer engagement or that customer investment in what you guys are trying to do.
No, absolutely. And, one of the things that I think we're always looking for is always that, that big dream, that big overarching goal with communication. And, I'm looking at you and I'm seeing behind you, a few posters, and you have like Venus and Mars, and, that's a great way to start your day. What are we going to do today? Oh, we're going to colonize Mars. All right. You know what I'm saying? And where we are trying to be honest with you, at the end of the day, what we believe the role of beer is in society is to bring people together. Mm-hmm. So, we wake up in the morning and we're always trying to communicate to people the best way for them to get together. And this is why this pandemic that we're going through right now has been so challenging for us, because our business is built based on people coming together and having a good time together. So, as Raphael said in the beginning, we're trying to sort of like change the tire of the car while the car is running, because we're learning every day how to run a business in this new environment. And a lot of that, at least most of my job, is to do exactly what you said. How do we translate that into communication that goes out there every day? We touch, millions of people every day here in Brazil with this type of messaging.
No, and I agree with you. I think, we feel like we've kind of been jolted into this acceleration, and everybody has, right? And in a way, just as you mentioned, of changing the tire while the car is moving, we have to accelerate our innovation. I think we had always been thinking about, well, what if we, worked remotely or, but now we're in the midst of it, and everybody is. So we all have this shared experience of how to deal with this and how to move forward. And it's been challenging at times, but then also kind of rewarding, and we're discovering maybe some of the power of the remote environment. Yeah.
You said one thing that I think we can summarize this, this entire piece in one word that you just said: acceleration. And maybe in your world, you're used to that more than me, but I think that one of the things we're going to see after this is I don't think the world's going to be completely different. Some things are definitely going to change, but I think the one thing we're going to see is that things are going to be happening faster, meaning, even in my field, which is a field that, doesn't rely on innovation as much as yours, things that we thought were going to happen 3 years from now are probably going to happen 3 months from now. And we're already seeing that, and that's something that I think that COVID-19 or this pandemic will bring to the business world. I think this situation or the world that we're going to see, hopefully in a few months from now or in a few years from now, I think is going to be much more accelerated than the one we saw, a few months ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. And And I think for us and maybe on the government side, right, we've been kind of poking at, virtual and remote and trying to ideate remotely and just felt, that's something we're going to have to deal with at some point, right? But now it's like we have to deal with it today. And
absolutely.
So we're trying to get our heads around it. And for us, I think one of the nice things, another maybe silver lining, so to speak, is we see that, through this, there's been, or at least we see and we hope it continues, a return to faith in serious experts, right? So here in the States, we have Dr. Fauci and others, and, people are relying on them. People are comfortable with them. People are kind of remembering, hey, these scientists and experts in these fields are the ones to listen to, because, here in the States, we've had a little battle with that, frankly, over the last several years. So again, these folks getting some airtime and being able to add some calm to the chaos.
I couldn't agree more, Paul. One of the things that at least in my world, I've been with the company for almost 20 years, or basically since the day I graduated. And one of the things that I've always learned, I've always heard, and you probably did it, the same happened to you, is that, you need to move fast, and you need to experience as many areas as you can. You need to do, the meritocracy to a certain extent rewarded people that were, that had a more broad experience, so to speak. And I think what you're saying right now is totally true. I'm starting to see this in my marketing organization. Take digital, for example. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you knew a little bit of digital was okay. Today, it's not enough. So you have to have somebody that has a deep knowledge in the digital space. Otherwise, you're not going to have the best marketing team. So I am actually happy to see this happening, because I think that at the end of the day, the consumer is going to win, companies are going to win, and therefore it's a win-win relationship. Where in the past, 5 years ago, you look at somebody's resumes and this guy did the same thing for 10 years. Oh, he's not good, or she's not good. No, the opposite. I think we're going to need people that are the best in their jobs, and it's okay if they love to do what they do for 10 years. You know what I mean? And I totally agree with you, because I see this happening in my organization right now. If I'm looking at somebody to do, let's say, a digital job, I want the best person in digital. I don't need somebody that does a little bit of digital and a little bit of that. I need somebody that does all of that.
Yeah, no, agree. And with the digital lifestyle, I think that's the other, or relying so much on digital now because of COVID, right? I think another thing that we're going to see is a healthier kind of digital lifestyle. I think folks are getting more comfortable with this, right? We're seeing Jimmy Fallon and others, right, in their homes, and for us, kind of in the culture we have at NASA and at the lab and with the government, hierarchy, it is so great, right, to see these folks in their homes, right, and some of those cultural barriers have kind of dissipated a little bit, right? To where for me, I don't have to go up to the 9th floor, get a little nervous in the elevator,
That's right.
and then open the door. I'm on mahogany row, so to speak, and then you're in this giant, sort of intimidating office, talking with some of the executives, right? Now
Absolutely.
we're kind of on a little bit more of a level playing ground. It's interesting.
Their house might be bigger, but your pictures are way cooler, though. I tell you that. You know what I'm saying? By the way, first and foremost, maybe they don't even know how to do the virtual background. Right. But you know what? This morning, Paul, as a matter of fact, I read something that I loved it, because you said once again, you have this ability of summarizing things in one word. I love it, because you said one thing that I think we'll definitely see from now on, which is a more human digital space. So this morning, I read an article about Zara. Zara, the retailer, the Spanish retailer. Mm-hmm. They started to ask the models that have always worked for them, the typical modeling work, the beautiful, girl in a nice, a photo shoot, done by an amazing photographer in the studio in New York City. I don't know where they take the pictures at, but you get the drift, right? So they started to ask the models to use their own phones, their own cameras at home to take pictures of the new collection.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things, one, for obvious reasons, because, we are in quarantine, therefore they're inside their homes. But, more than that, they wanted to give people a more human feeling. Like, hey, listen, they don't always look that pretty, or they don't always dress up like that. So imagine this, these models are taking pictures of them with the new collection, but at home. And I thought that was amazing because it brings a more human side of that story to you. And that's exactly what you just said about I think if you're not in the corporate world, people don't understand that feeling that you get in the elevator, the butterflies. But that's exactly what happens. Where here, you don't have that. You know what I mean? It's the playing field is much more leveled. Right. And I see this happening in the business world as well. Maybe a sales call could be done this way, right? You don't have to go to Walmart and sit in a room and be dealing with a buyer in an environment that doesn't really help you, where you're under leveraged, right? But again, I see a much. You're absolutely right. I see a much more human side. Yeah. Once we cross this bridge.
Yeah.
And there is going back to one thing that you said, Paul. And it brings me back to the inception of Rio2C, that I'm seeing that actually people is currently relying in two things, that arts and science, and it's incredible. So people, it's totally relying on entertainment to keep their mental health during quarantine. So we are seeing this explosion of lives and etc. And on the other hand, on science to get us out of this, right? To build new ways, and even build new ways to live better during this tough times. So, and it's interesting because this brings me back to Leonardo da Vinci. That was always our inspiration, and bringing these two words together, that people feel like they are apart, but they are actually completely intertwined. Right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that. You're right. I mean, I think those are two things that people are leaning on, right, to get through this. The science and the data, right, and visualizing that data, and then some relief from all that in a way with the entertainment, a lot of the entertainment industry allowing things to be free, right? Or maybe for a limited time, but just saying, hey, for the next month, please come, on HBO, Showtime, Apple Plus TV, those kind of platforms. So I like that, Rafael. Kind of, it does bring it kind of back full circle to science and art, kind of helping us have the left and right brain engaged during this pandemic.
And back to
hey Paul, have you seen, or Rafael, have you seen this thing on the internet now that everyone is talking about Animal Crossing games?
Animal Crossing?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I didn't.
Because that's a little bit of what you're saying. People are trying to escape there. And Animal Crossing now, the games of Animal Crossing is a thing right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen it?
I have. My kids have also. But one other. Oh, go ahead, Rafael.
No, I was just going back to Ricardo's point on how things are speeding up, and I think that you guys can bring together two very different portraits of if we move like some years ago when we were starting, to introduce a storytelling culture inside NASA, I'm pretty sure that was not an easy path, right? A big, literally rock science, driven company. So to make people understand that this was something that was meaningful, and not only meaningful, but actually showed up as an essential tool or strategy to bring NASA to where it is today. And I think there is a big contrast with what we are living now that goes back to Ricardo's point, that probably a lot of the things that he's doing during the pandemic in a, normal daily basis situation would take 1 year, 2 years, board of directors, a big presentation in the boardroom, approvals, and advertising agency, and blah, 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 and things are being done in 2 days, 1 week. So I would like to see you guys talking a little bit about that, because I think this is something that really gonna change the business landscape.
Paul, before you talk about it, I would love to hear your point of view on this as well. Let me just say one thing, Rafael. There's one thing that Brazilians will gain from this, which is punctuality. Working remotely made everyone show up to their meetings on time. I don't know how, but people in Brazil now show up on time to their meetings, and that has been fabulous. I mean, that's been the best thing that this whole thing of working remotely has brought, at least to my day-to-day routine. Meetings, they start on time, they finish on time, everyone is more efficient. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to the office.
Yeah, no, and to add to that, that's great. Especially with the stay at home, right? Availability of those folks. It used to be more difficult. You'd have to plan these meetings so far in advance because you knew folks were traveling. You'd have to work with different administrators to, hey, assistants, hey, I need to get some of this person's time. And now, along with the punctuality, because we've seen that also, Ricardo, is the availability of a lot of these folks to be present because they're not on the road or, so the availability for us has been a huge gain that we've been challenged with in the past before this.
One more thing I would add to this, Rafael and Paul. I mean, we, both you and I, even though we're in very different industries, the base of a lot of our work is creativity, right? I mean, the heart and soul of what we do as marketing is concerned for beer, at least in my point of view, is based on creativity. And one of the things that I found, I'm a big believer that procrastination leads to more, to better creativity at the end of the day. And that's one of the things we're seeing now. You look at brand managers. Before, brand managers, they were spending all day on, in meetings and performance reviews and call with the agencies and da-da-da-da-da. And at the end of the day, they weren't being creative because they were outsourcing creativity because they didn't have time for creativity. Now, they need to sit back, look at what they're doing and be creative. And we're all creative at the end of the day, but they didn't have any time to be creative. So I am actually, we are going through a tough time as a business here as well. Sales are down, cash is tight and all that. But I am seeing, at least in the past, 14, 15 months that I've been in the job here back in Brazil, I am seeing the best creative output since my arrival, which is great. And we have less money and we have less resources and we have a business that is not as good as it used to be, but we have, in the other hand, more time and more, and I think more a better creative output at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, and that's I love what you said, because I'm also a believer in procrastination to help drive creativity, right? And one of the things that we try to remind each other at the lab and the folks that we work with is, one way to look at creativity is navigating the space you're in, right? And that's one thing that we've really had to do over these last, few months is how do we get creative to continue what we need to do within the constraints that we have now. And that has led to some really wonderful ways of, as you mentioned, Ricardo, tapping into folks who maybe haven't had time to be creative, right? Just as you described. And it's been wonderful for them, I think, also to be able to fire up some of those brain cells that have been dormant because they've been squeezed out, right? They've been pushed aside with all this other busyness. So we're seeing a lot of those same things.
And the office was a pretty busy place, right? I mean, you can't imagine this, after this call, let's say I have half an hour between meetings. If I'm at home, I can think about stuff. I can read an article. I can think about, something, that an idea. In the office, if you're sitting still, you're not producing. And we don't like this here. You're not working. and that's not being translated into results. Get out of the way, and I think working from home has brought this advantage to our routine, right? I don't want to talk about Animal Crossing again, just because I'm hooked on the game. But Rafael, you should start playing. It's the thing.
I will.
Check it out, because that's a huge source of creativity as well. I think people, another thing that I believe it's important for creativity is having a hobby. It's having something that allows you to think about other stuff besides work, or besides your routine. And I think that everyone is finding. I have a guy on my team, for example, that he bought a piano. And I'm like, why the hell did you buy a piano? Well, because I have these breaks throughout the day, and I want to learn how to play piano. I'm like, how are you doing this? Oh, I hired this guy on the internet. So I'm having the same way we're having a Zoom here. He's having a Zoom or a conference call, a Skype call, whatever it is, or a FaceTime call or WhatsApp call with his piano professor. And he's learning how to play. And, I'm like, this is it's mind blowing that, he would never do this if he was, under his routine.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
So tell us now.
That's a great point.
Paul, tell me more about the storytelling that goes behind rocket ships, because I'm not going to be able to go to sleep without knowing this.
Well, so for us, if okay if I shared a little bit on my screen, Rafael?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so let me just share a little bit here. Over here, and hopefully you guys will be able to see this. Let me, there's just a few slides from here that I want to just share with you. Okay. Okay, so Ricardo and Rafael, right? So, as you know, NASA likes to go places, right? And, spectacular places, like with mission right now going to this small body called Psyche. And spacecraft's going to travel to this metal world. So we believe that this is a protoplanet, right? That everything got stripped away except its iron core, and we've never seen one of these before. And so we wrote a story in our proposal to help our stakeholders understand that this metal planet is going to help us understand our place in the solar system better, right? So making that human connection. And I'm just going to kind of fast forward here to another slide. So we want to be the ones that keeps taking NASA to the places they want to go, right? JPL, we want to be that team for them. So in this process, we have to figure out in this universe of what ifs, which ones do we decide? How do we decide between this or that idea, right? And it really is a competition of ideas. So how do we get from hundreds of ideas to the right idea? you know? And how do we get our stakeholders internally to, first, we got to get through our internal gates, right? And then to our external stakeholders, how do we get them to believe our tomorrow versus our competitors tomorrow? What makes them stand out? And we've been able to convince or even demonstrate that story is the way to do it. It comes down to story. And so scientists and technologists usually come to us with two things, right? The what is and the what could be. And they understand these two intimately. They've been living with the what is, and they have this idea of the what could be. Where could we go? What will we learn? How will we get there? Who is the team to do it? But what lies in between the what is and the what could be, right, is the story. And so we kind of call this the curiosity gap. The curiosity gap is really what drove the scientists or humans in general, right, into wanting to understand something, wanting to understand today versus tomorrow. And so one thing I wanted to just share real quick is just about curiosity and the power.
Do you
of it,
think
right?
that one of the reasons why Homo sapiens were able to advance faster than other species was because of this gap?
Yeah, I think in us, we're innately curious, right? And we want to know how to figure things out. We have questions, and we're driven as humans to answer those questions, right? And so that leads me here to, Harvard Business Review, back in the end of 2018, had this great article about the business case for curiosity. And so these are just some of the highlights, right? And to your point, Ricardo, right? Most of the breakthrough discoveries were because of curiosity, right? And also they talked about curiosity being a basic human attribute. And when we are curious, we view tough situations more creatively, right? So again, just as humans, we curious, we get creative. It drives our creativity. And, and this gentleman, this is one of his quotes, that he was just driven by being curious. He saw things in our world that he didn't understand, and he wanted to figure it out. And that's what drove him. And then, I'm also a big fan of Brian Grazer. And so he wrote a book a couple of years ago called A Curious Mind. And this is a quote from his book. And, he believes in this power of what happens when we are curious, when we say, what if we could, then with that, what if, and so on. And it is kind of this cumulative power, sorry. And that curiosity is just a powerful human trait. So what we've started to do at the lab is, we're right here next to industry, and we've reached out to Disney and Pixar, and we've kind of picked their brains. So years ago, we've gone down there and we've adapted some of their tools. And one of them is this deep structure of storytelling that we think is just fantastic, that they use to communicate from the boardroom to the playground, right? So I looked at this and I said, wow, this is exactly what we try to do when we go from the scientist to the stakeholder. So we broke up this 6-sentence template and into these chunks. And so the first 2 sentences, once upon a time, and there was, is that what is, right? So what is happening today? What is the current state of the art? The because of that, and because of that is the what could be, right? So what could be because of this idea that you had one day, right? And then the finally is what's that new knowledge? So Raphael, to your point earlier, when we bring these to a team of scientists, they think of this as fluff. They think of this as those soft skills that I don't need, I'm a scientist. I don't need to dabble in this storytelling. But they usually, follow along. And at the end of the day, when we do this exercise, what we ask them to do is we create a whiteboard with these 6 sentences, okay, going across. And we give them all each stickies and a pen, Sharpie. We love stickies and Sharpies. And we ask each team member to come up and put their 6 sentences up, okay? And they read them aloud. So this could be the lead principal investigator. He or she comes up, lays theirs. This could be the lead system engineer. He or she comes up, puts up their stickies, until we have something that looks like this. And the beauty of this is not only do we get, and we didn't realize this at first, it was one of those great results that came to the top, is not only do they get to see what's in the heads of the other team members, but we realize not everybody's on the same page. And so this was a huge exercise in concurrence.
One thing that I felt as well, Paul, you also break the hierarchy. It feels like there's no, right? I mean, there's no boss. Everyone isn't, this structure allows people to be at the same level as the others. And I thought that was amazing, because I'm a big believer that a hierarchy goes against creativity as well. So once you eliminate that, you create something like this. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
That's great. And Ricardo, you are an awesome straight man, because that is, that's exactly what happens here. And it's been very beneficial for us. And then in the recurring team dynamics from that day forward, right, the team feels that. They feel like some of those barriers, again, have been broken. And it's always the guy or gal that they never thought would be the storyteller in that group, right? And next thing you know, they're like, hey, was that Jerry, the redhead guy with the beard? His storyline was really good, right? And so you're right. And and then the other piece that we talked about earlier, right, that we touched on, was the emotional investment versus the critical assessment. And so we've learned in our office, we get all the feedback from NASA directly whenever we send in a proposal. So we've got a whole database, and what we're discovering is the more you increase that emotional investment, you decrease that critical assessment. So as our reviewers are going through these proposals and reading our stories, if we can hook them up front, right? If we can get them to say, I like the science, I think it's doable, it's compelling, and we get them rooting for us, then when they read further on about the implementation, about the team, about our cost and our budget, they tend to be a little less critical, because they really want us to get to the next phase of this procurement process.
Wow.
And then one other thing, I'd like to the other thing that we're exploring now, which both you guys, I know at least Raphael, is sound, right? And the compelling nature of sound, and how that can help us tell our stories, but also help us create, again, some emotional investment, some human connection. So one of the companies that we're talking to this year is called Man-Made Music. They're in industry here, and we're having some conversations with them how to brand sonification of our missions, right? And how that can help break down this us versus them mentality, because if we make it through that first gate, then NASA comes to JPL and has what they call a site visit. And these are usually pretty technical, but we try to make them more of a place where we can tell a story, where we can choreograph what's happening, and music's going to play a big part of that. And one thing that I just like to show as an early example that the folks up at Stanford did is to help. It's about a 1.5-minute clip, I believe, to help communicate climate change right? They took a bunch of data and they composed some music around it. And so I'd just like you guys to just listen to this and let me know how you feel at the end. So in this piece, the climate data has been codified, right? The pitch of the tone you hear represents the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, while the pitch intensity of the plucked strings represents the temperature averages, right, over time. So just listen, notice how the rise in CO2 drives a rise in the temperature, and you'll just kind of get a feel for that. So I hope this plays okay. I haven't done this over Zoom before, but let's give it a try.
Well, I'll tell you what, after listening to Paul, the one thing I can tell everyone is stay curious. That drives the world forward. And I think now, because of the fact that we have a little more time, things are going to be accelerated, right? There's going to be a more human side to the digital world. This procrastination will lead to better, and more creative ideas. And hopefully we're going to come out of this better than when we started. So I have no doubt we're going to see each other in person soon, Paul and Raphael, yes. and hopefully we as society, as a human race, we're going to be better off. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, guys.
Oh, and thank you, Raphael. And I too, I think we're seeing that the human connection can happen virtually, and I look forward to this ripple effect of what's going to come over the next months and years due to the jolt that we've had from the coronavirus to accelerate our innovation. So appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to seeing you guys in person and maybe having a cold beer.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's going to be on me, by the way.
For sure. Thank you so much again, and thanks guys for the difference you both in your two different words have been doing. It's great. It's an honor for me and for Rio2C having you both here. So I'm gonna switch to Portuguese to give my last sentence here. Paul, thank you so much. Ricardo,
thank you.
See you soon. So às 18 horas, pessoal, a gente tem o painel sobre música, para a gente falar um pouquinho mais sobre essa febre de lives que está invadindo, né, as nossas casas aí durante a quarentena. E amanhã, mais Rio2C Live e mais Ambev Creative X às 5 da tarde. Continuem conectados. Muito obrigado. Até amanhã. Stay home, stay safe, stay connected. Bye, bye.
Bye, bye.
Ciao. Bye.